Can you imagine making your Red Bull Racing debut at your home Grand Prix? Well, that's exactly what Yuki Tsunoda is about to experience. A completely unexpected move, even by Red Bull standards. But why now? What's really going on inside the most controversial team on the grid? Today, we're going to tell you the whole truth behind the surprising driver change that has shaken up the 2025 season. From Lawson's mistakes to Honda's hidden agendas, to the internal tension with Verstappen. This isn't a simple replacement. It's a dramatic change with unpredictable consequences. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, do you think Yuki can handle the pressure at Suzuka? Or are we facing another failed Red Bull experiment? Formula One is experiencing an unpredictable 2025, but no one expected such a drastic move as the one Red Bull has just executed. After just 2 race weekends, the team has decided to dispense with Liam Lawson and replace him with Yuki Tsunoda for the Japanese Grand Prix. These kinds of lightning-fast decisions are well known in Red Bull's management philosophy, but even by its own standards, this has been extraordinarily swift, almost visceral. What we're seeing isn't simply a matter of performance. It's a clear sign that the team is in full emergency mode, trying to contain a season that, from very early on, threatens to spiral out of control. Lawson, the New Zealand driver who was supposed to be the solution to the second seat issues after Sergio Perez's crash, hasn't lived up to expectations. In his debut with the RB21, he not only failed to score points, but was eliminated in Q1 in every possible session, including the sprint. The collapse in confidence and pace was evident. Melbourne was a disaster from the start. He retired due to mechanical problems. Then came China, where he sank to the back of the grid in qualifying and the race with no signs of recovery. Overall, he has had the worst start to a season for a Red Bull driver in recent memory. The team had hoped, at the very least, for performance close to Verstappen's. What they received instead was a less competitive car that seemed to be driven with fear, lacking consistency, lacking adaptation, and, most seriously, lacking progress. But this isn't just a story of statistics and stopwatches. It's a political and symbolic one. Red Bull took Lawson over Tsunoda during the winter, a gamble based on the New Zealander's supposed mental toughness and adaptability. At the time, it seemed like a bold but calculated choice. However, what we're seeing now is a radical about-face. After just 2 races, Red Bull decides enough is enough. There are no second chances, no long-term development. It's simply cut short. And this speed in decision-making suggests that what's at stake is much bigger than a driver's seat. The reputation of a team that has dominated in recent years, but is now beginning to show internal cracks, is at stake. Because while all this is happening, McLaren has emerged as a serious and established rival. In just 2 weekends, it has achieved what many couldn't for years, put real pressure on Red Bull in both championships. The 42-point gap in the Constructors' Championship has set off alarm bells in Milton Keynes. And when a team like Red Bull feels it's losing control, it tends to react harshly. For them, allowing a second car to fail to score points is unacceptable. It's no longer just a matter of driver development or future projections. It's an immediate issue. Either they react now or they could see the championship slip away before the mid-season break. Therefore, the context behind this change goes far beyond a simple poor performance. It's about keeping championship hopes alive. It's about sending a message to the entire structure. There's only room for performance here, not excuses. It's about preventing what is today a poor start from turning into an irreversible nightmare. And in the midst of this turmoil, Yuki Tsunoda, a driver who until a few weeks ago seemed marginalized, becomes the card Red Bull decides to play. Not out of romanticism, not out of blind faith, but because on this chessboard, doing nothing would be the worst move. When one looks closely at Red Bull's decision to replace Liam Lawson with Yuki Tsunoda, it's impossible not to see that, beyond pure on-track performance, there is a complex web of strategic, political, and commercial reasons that push the team to act with unusual speed and determination, even by its own standards. This move is neither a fluke nor simply an emotional response to 2 disappointing weekends. It's a move shaped by sporting urgency, pressure from sponsors, internal diplomacy, and above all, the need to send a clear message to the paddock. Red Bull doesn't have time to wait. First, we must understand the influence Honda has on this decision. This year marks the end of an era between Red Bull Racing and the Japanese manufacturer. In 2026, Honda will take a new direction, aligning itself with Aston Martin as its new power unit supplier, while Red Bull will continue its ambitious engine project alongside Ford. This split, while seemingly amicable, is a fundamental shift in the team's ecosystem. Therefore, allowing Yuki Tsunoda, the only Japanese driver on the grid and a Honda protege, To have his moment of glory at the Suzuka Grand Prix in Red Bull colors is not simply a coincidence. It is a diplomatic gesture, a symbolic farewell, and a way to honor a partnership that has taken the Milton Keynes team to the top of Formula One. At this point, a determining factor comes into play: money. Although there are no official figures, sources within the paddock suggest that Honda has offered considerable financial support for Yuki to occupy that seat, at least for this race. This is not the first time that a technical alliance has relied on decisions based on visibility, but what is interesting here is how Red Bull has managed to disguise this commercial pressure as a purely sporting decision, in Christian Horner's words. The reality, however, is much more complex. Tsunoda represents an opportunity to consolidate the relationship with Honda at a delicate moment and, at the same time, project the team as a flexible structure, capable of making tough decisions if the situation demands it. Now, from a sporting perspective, this change represents a low-risk move for Red Bull. If Tsunoda succeeds, the team can celebrate a narrative-perfect victory. The local driver, buoyed by domestic and manufacturer support, resurfaces at home and delivers a key result. If he fails, the reputational damage is minimal. They can claim it was a symbolic opportunity, a gesture to Honda, and make another move without being exposed. In that sense, the change is almost a strategic hedge. Any result achieved with Yuki can be justified and managed politically without compromising the official narrative. And let's not forget another key element: internal pressure within the team. At Red Bull, there's not just a fight for points on the track. There's also a constant tension between different management visions. On the one hand, Helmut Marko, a longtime supporter of Tsunoda, and on the other, Christian Horner, more inclined to risky moves like Lawson's. This decision also sends a message within the team itself, a realignment of power that suggests Japanese influence still holds sway in the most important decisions. It's no coincidence that the decisive meeting took place in Dubai, a neutral location away from the noise of Europe, where interests are negotiated behind closed doors, but with very visible consequences. Finally, there's a topic that very few dare to mention openly: Red Bull's post-Verstappen future. The team urgently needs to identify a driver who can offer stability and results in the second seat. Yuki Tsunoda, with his previous experience, his knowledge of the Red Bull environment, and his new, more mature approach, represents a real possibility. He's not just a temporary replacement, he's a definitive test. If he responds well, he could establish himself as a long-term option. And if he doesn't, the team will have come full circle, avoiding unnecessary criticism and paving the way for other alternatives like Arvid Lindblad, or even a reconfiguration of the second team with names like Franco Colapinto lurking. Ultimately, this move isn't impulsive. It's meticulously calculated. Red Bull is playing a chess game on multiple boards at the same time: sporting, commercial, political, and emotional. And in that game, Tsunoda isn't just another piece. He's the knight that can turn the tide. The challenge facing Yuki Tsunoda is no small feat. His arrival at Red Bull isn't simply the logical rise of a driver from the second team to the main team. It's a situation fraught with expectation, media pressure, and a technical demand that has proven too much for almost any driver not named Max Verstappen. Tsunoda isn't just being asked to adapt quickly to the RB21. He's also being asked to perform immediately on the most emotional circuit possible for him: Suzuka, his homeland, and under the gaze of a Japanese fan base that has dreamed for years of seeing one of their own at the top. And that context alone would be enough to crush many. But Yuki's challenge goes far beyond the emotional or symbolic. He's facing a car, the RB21, that has proven to be one of the most demanding and complex cars to drive on the entire grid. A car developed around Max Verstappen's unique driving style, a style that has exposed all those who have tried unsuccessfully to replicate it. What Max does with that car is not normal, and that is precisely the problem. The RB21 has a very unstable balance, with an ultra-aggressive front end that requires total confidence on corner entry. To exploit its full potential, the driver must be able to load the front axle precisely, entering quickly and trusting that the rear end will remain stable. Which, more often than not, it doesn't. Any error in input dosage generates immediate oversteer. That is why Liam Lawson could never find his rhythm. He was constantly correcting, fighting a car that seemed designed for one person. And this is where the big question arises: will Yuki Tsunoda be able to adapt to that technical profile? His traditionally aggressive driving style, based on deep braking followed by a sharp turn-in at corner entry, can be both an advantage and a death trap in this car. If he can fine-tune his technique, harnessing that aggression with control and precision, he could find a performance window that no other driver apart from Verstappen has been able to explore. But if he overdoes it, if he pushes it too far too early, the car will punish him mercilessly. And to complicate matters further, Yuki arrives with no prior experience in the RB21. He has had no specific test sessions, hasn't put any significant mileage on this chassis, and his only reference is the data he can glean from the simulator and from comparative analysis with his former team, Racing Bulls. In other words, he's jumping into the deep end without knowing how deep it is, and with no time to acclimatize. Suzuka will be his first real exposure to the car, and it will be on one of the most technical circuits on the calendar, with high-speed corners like the S's, where the car's balance is put to the test. Furthermore, Yuki will have to deal with constant external pressure. His every move will be watched, analyzed, and judged closely, not only by the media and fans, but also from within the team itself, where comparisons with Lawson will be inevitable. Added to this is the constant shadow of Max Verstappen, who, although publicly cautious about the change, is still a factor of internal pressure. Yuki must not only perform, he must convince the team that he will not be a burden, but a competitive and reliable asset. And then there's the psychological aspect. In the past, Tsunoda has been criticized for his explosive temper and tendency to get frustrated in moments of tension. At Red Bull, there's no room for emotional instability. Every race decision, every radio communication, every reaction to a technical problem will be interpreted as a test of his maturity. It's no longer just about being fast. It's about showing that he's evolved, that he's ready to carry the weight of a team that lives to win, and that, when he makes a mistake, he doesn't look for excuses but for solutions. If he manages to overcome all these challenges, Tsunoda will not only redeem himself as a driver, he will redefine his career and his legacy within Formula One. But if he fails, if he is overwhelmed by the pressure, the car, or the environment, his time at Red Bull could become the point of no return. Because this team is unforgiving. And at this stage of the championship, every tenth, every decision, and every gesture counts. So yes, Tsunoda has a unique opportunity, but it's one that comes with a sharp edge. And only those who know how to walk on it without falling survive. And so we come to the end of an analysis that reveals much more than a simple driver change. Red Bull's decision to place Yuki Tsunoda in the seat occupied until a few hours ago by Liam Lawson is not an isolated move. It reflects a season that is beginning to take an unpredictable turn, where decisions are made at the limit, with the clock ticking and under pressure that only the top teams truly understand. This is not just a matter of performance. It's a story of urgency, diplomacy, and competitive survival. Today we saw how Lawson's situation went from promising to an example of how fleeting Formula One can be when results aren't forthcoming. We also understood that Tsunoda's choice is not solely a sporting one. It is the result of a complex equation that combines marketing, the geopolitics of engines, the weight of a strategic Japanese market, and the symbolism of bidding farewell to Honda at Suzuka. Red Bull has woven its strategy with surgical precision, using every element to its advantage to keep the narrative under control and the focus where they want it to be, on continuing to win. But the real question remains, can Yuki Tsunoda rise to the challenge? Because beyond the romanticism of racing at home, beyond the media support he'll receive at Suzuka, what's at stake here is his career. If he manages to perform in a car that has destroyed the morale of other drivers, he could establish himself as a solid figure in the Red Bull structure. If he fails, the narrative will be merciless, and there will be no second chances. Chapters like these are what define seasons. They're the moments when great teams show whether they have the ability to adapt, rebuild, and capitalize on even their most questionable decisions. Red Bull has proven once again that it doesn't shy away from making drastic decisions. But now the time has come to see if their gamble pays off or if they've played too risky a card. Leave me your opinion in the comments. Do you think Tsunoda will be able to adapt to the RB21 and save Red Bull's season? Or are we facing another failed experiment in the team's cursed second seat? I'm interested to know your thoughts because this story is just beginning. If you found this analysis interesting and it helped you understand the chaos unfolding at Red Bull, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss the next episodes. Because what's coming next is just as explosive. In our next video, we'll discuss the growing tension between Max Verstappen and the Red Bull leadership, and why this could trigger the biggest internal earthquake the team has experienced since its founding. See you very soon.